You move the c, so you had x squared minus 8x equals negative 15 when you subtracted that 15 over. And then you found the b was negative 8. You halved that. You squared it. You guys did a good job with the 16. You added the 16 to both sides. We've definitely improved on that. I think most folks remembered that. And then the left side now factors as x minus 4 squared. This is 1. You guys, I noticed a lot of you, well, maybe not a lot of you, but some of you guys are a little bit nervous about the fact that the square root of 1 is 1. It was almost as if the square root is a perfect square root, we almost feel like the plus or minus doesn't need to be there. But the plus or minus needs to be there all the time if you square root both sides. So this would give us x is equal to 4 plus 1, and x is equal to 4 minus 1. So those, they got 5 or 3 for answers or solutions to this equation. We're right. So that's not very shocking, is it? Hey, it's not very shocking, is it? You're good. Check this out. This might be shocking. You watching?
Yes.
And erase all this stuff. This, if you can really, hey, listen. If you can really understand this and see this, I think it's a big step for you. Notice that at no point did I say solve using this technique or solve using that technique. It's you guys, because we've been practicing it, you automatically went to complete the square. And really, honestly, that's not a bad move, because complete the square is going to work on any quadratic you can find. But you might argue, somebody could argue, that factoring would have been the easier, faster way.
5 and 3.
This is factorable, yeah. So this would be x minus 3, x minus 5. So x minus 3 equals 0. X minus 5 equals 0.
So much faster.
X equals 3. And that's debatable, because somebody who's really good at complete the square could go pretty fast too. But this would be a whole different way that no one, not one person even considered. So just realize that there is more than one. Are you listening? There is more than one way to solve a quadratic equation. You know, factoring works sometimes. Complete the square always works. And of course, you've seen the quadratic formula just a little bit too. So, all right. How you doing? It's okay? All right. Well, let's keep going with some reviewing. Let's see how this all goes. If you would, please try. Ready, go.
Yeah. Next week. I don't know what time.
That sucks for me.
That sucks for me.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, do podcast.
Why do you do that? I feel like
Because it's fun, it's just a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
Kyle, you're on. So it's customary usually to write this. No, not at all. I just want to let you know, like, usually you'll see. Doodly doo.
You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that.
Doodly doo.
But you walked up to me yesterday, I was like,
I know. I was gonna jump on you too. Probably should have.
I was like,
You don't have to split it like that.
so I went home, I felt it. I like 7. I like 7. Didn't wake up this morning until like 7. I slept for 12 hours.
Bro, I went home last night. My dad was like, "You better get your homework done." So I had to eat first. Okay, do your homework. I'll make Chinese food. So my dad made Chinese food. And so I ate. Then I did my history DBQ. And then I was like, no, it's getting pretty late. So I like sat in my bed and I watched an OG game. And I fell asleep. And I woke up this morning. I forgot to take a shot.
TJ, are you up here? You're up
Yeah, right there. In the very light blue marker.
on its last legs.
What?
The marker's on its last legs.
Except it doesn't have legs. A cowboy rode into town on Friday, stayed 3 days, then left on Friday. How do you do that?
Huh?
A cowboy rode into town
So guys, just for the sake of
and
folks
left on Friday.
later on watching the video, I just want to demonstrate this for you.
4 ninths.
First step is to square root both sides because the perfect square is already by itself. So this would be 6x plus 13 equals plus or minus root 7. You guys are doing a really nice job with the timing of the plus minus. It needs to show up right away as soon as you square root both sides. At this stage, you're going to subtract 13 from both sides. That'll give you 6x is equal to negative 13 plus or minus root 7. And then division by 6 on both sides will give you that solution right there. And I think just about everybody I chatted with had that. Doing good? Okay. Let's do a couple more. And I think this one, hang on. Do I want to do that? Okay, so this, I want you guys to use your calculators on this. So I'm going to give you guys different instructions.
Hey, go to town.
That was a little bit aggressive. My bad, Keely. Just a little bit.
Approximate to the nearest tenth, please. Approximate to the nearest tenth. Again, I'm going to leave it open to you as far as what method you might want to use here. Now, please try to solve this, and then in the end, use your calculator to round it off to the nearest tenth. So it'll be an approximate answer. It won't be exact like those other ones we did. Of those watching later on, perhaps, it was interesting watching you guys kind of go through this. I was just kind of watching you. You know, a lot of folks said, let's go ahead and subtract 6 from both sides. And when you did that, you got x squared plus 8x plus 10 equals 0. And then I think intelligently, a lot of folks thought, hey, I'm going to try to factor this, use the magic x thing. And you found out sooner or later that didn't work. And so maybe the idea is let's come with x squared plus 8x plus 10.
Oh, I didn't subtract over the 6.
Well, so that's what I'm saying. Like some people did this, but we're going to come back around to your way, I think, here in a second. So then if you're going to complete the square, you would say x squared plus 8x equals negative 10. Your b is 8. Half it squared is 16. So when you add that in, did anybody notice that when you went through all this, didn't you get the exact same thing you started with?
Yeah.
Right? Which is why what you did worked, right? Because it was already a perfect square on the left side. So this ended up being x plus 4 squared equals 6 after you factor. Then you square root and square root. End up with x plus 4 equals plus or minus. It was approximately 2.4, I think, for that square root of 6. So then your final steps would be to subtract 4 from both sides. X is equal to negative 4 plus or minus 2.4. When you execute the plus or minus, you end up with x equals negative 6.4 or negative 1.6 for those two answers. And again, you guys are navigating that quite well. Do you have any questions? Okay, awesome. Will you return to your seats? We're going to do a little work with the quadratic formula. So grab your notes packet. This is it for notes. Last few examples in there. Let's get them out. Let's give it a shot. On the video?
Yeah.
Did you sing along?
No. What did you say in the video? Okay, I didn't have my sound on.
video.
I watched the video, I just never have sound on.
You should go back and watch the video. Now listen to it. It's why?
I don't remember the song, but I remember.
was that due today?
It was due last time.
Okay, so then I did. So I just.
Yeah.
According to Nectar, I have no memory. Short term.
My singing was so awesome it made your head explode. Now you can't remember it. That's what it is. So guys, hey, listen up. Hey, hush. Hey. Yeah, this is a polite way of saying be quiet. I'm waving hello to you. So if you notice here, number 1 mentions that thing that was on the video, this quadratic formula. And again, I want to let you guys know that everything we've been doing here in the last 2-3 months is all, for the most part, pretty connected. It all has to do with quadratics. And with quadratics, the solving of them, you really have 3 options. If a quadratic will factor, then factoring is often a pretty fast and easy way to do it. But a lot of quadratics don't factor, and so one of the ways that you can solve is the complete the square option, which we've been practicing quite a bit. There's also this. So guys, I want to mention this to you. I'm going to write this up here. I'll erase it in a second, so please don't write this yourselves, unless you just have some other space you want to write this. So when it comes to quadratics and solving them, so here are your options. Factoring and complete the square. I'll just put that. And the quadratic formula. So you have those 3 options at this point. There are others, but for us, these are going to be our 3 options. So factoring. Here's when you'd use factoring. If it factors. If it doesn't factor, then you can't use it, right? Pretty simple. These 2 right here always work. So it doesn't really matter what the particulars are of the quadratic, whether it factors or not, or you have real solutions, or later on in Algebra 2 you'll learn about complex or imaginary solutions. It really doesn't matter what kind of solutions you have. Those will always work. And so for that reason, I'd say complete the square, quadratic formula are both very useful, potentially. So let's remind ourselves what the quadratic formula is. This is something that you do need to have memorized. And if you know one of the songs, it does help. And so I think for this, let's go ahead and do this one together here. It says use the quadratic formula to solve. And so I'm thinking the very first thing we ought to do is write down the quadratic formula, because it says use this. So we're going to try to use that. So here it is. And for those that didn't listen, we will sing a song in just a second. Yeah? You got it, DJ. I see. No, I'm going to sing it. I don't know about public school or private school, but that's what I do too. So I guess put me in the public school category, right? That's what we do. Okay. So there it is. This is the quadratic formula. B squared minus 4AC. I got that, right? Yeah. All over 2A. Okay. So the song, the one that I like to sing anyways, goes with Pop Goes the Weasel. You guys all know Pop Goes the Weasel. Right? You know that song? Yes? Okay. So here's how it goes. We're going to sing together. How many of you know this? The quadratic formula sung with the Pop Goes the Weasel? If you listen to the video, you actually did hear it. Well, so maybe DJ and Andrew and I could start. Will you guys sing along?
Sing along.
Here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's okay.
I'm ready.
I heard you, DJ. It was good. That's good. Yeah. There are all kinds of like raps and things too that you could use, but whatever.
I think we should.
Okay, hey guys, let's try to sing it. Let's try to sing it together. Again, ready? 1, 2, 3, go. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
I only know the last part.
All over.
I know an excellent.
A bunch of mumbling and then that part. Okay.
I messed it up. It doesn't even go through rhythm when I sing it.
All right, so guys, listen. I would say for a skill or a concept like this, listen up, please. I know it's a catchy tune. Shh. But stop. I'd say an entry skill for a question like this. Listen, please. An entry skill is something that if you don't know how to do this, like if you don't know how to do the entry skill, you really don't have a chance to do this question. And I would say that memorizing the quadratic formula is clearly an entry skill here, right? Like if you don't know what the quadratic formula is, you really don't have a prayer to do what this question is asking you to do. And so for those of you that are visual learners, perhaps if you made a flashcard with the quadratic formula and you read it 10 times a day for the next 3-4 days, that might be enough. If you are an auditory learner, you should like make your parents' heads explode by singing this all the time. And sing it out loud so you can hear it, or have somebody sing it to you so you can hear it. If you are more of a visual or a kinematic learner, you could take something like this and you could write it down 10 times every day for the next 4 days. I think odds are pretty good that you'll have it memorized by then. Does that make sense? So understanding what kind of a learner you are, you can take that sort of strategy and help you get this memorized. Because if you don't have this memorized, as we said before, it's not going to go well. Make sense? And we'll sing the song a bunch in the next couple of days too, and we'll write it down a bunch. So I'll try to help you with that, but you need to know that. Okay, so guys, you good? So here's how this works. Hey, I know it's distracting, but please stop. So just because my head is pointed that way, it's not your cue to talk.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so the next thing we need to do, once we understand what the quadratic formula is we need to identify the A and the B and the C. And good news is we've done that already a lot with these. So what would you guys say is the A value for this particular quadratic?
4.
That's right. How about the B?
1.
It is 1. It's not x, right? Remember the A, B, C, those are just the coefficients on the variables. So A is 4, B is 1, C is?
-3.
-3. Okay, so the quadratic formula is pretty straightforward. Really all you have to do here is plug in the A and the B and the C in the appropriate spots, and then are you listening? Order of operations. You can do order of operations. It'll go well. There's a couple of pain points that people will often make mistakes with. I'll try to point those out to you, help you navigate those. But check this out. Next step would be to plug everything in where it goes. So do this with me, right? So you should be writing this down alongside. We're going pretty slow here. So what I'm going to do is, I think this is a really good step. I hope you'll follow it. I'm going to replace all of the variables, the A, B, and C, with empty parentheses. This is how we evaluated and did order of operations before, and I still think this is a good way to do it. So notice all the A, B, and C, they're gone now. I'm going to replace them with whatever numbers go in there. So we said that B was 1. So I put the 1 in those two spots. And we said A was 4. So I put that in those two spots. And C only gets the 1 spot there, and it's -3. See how that's nice and neat and clear? There's no, I lost minus signs. I mean, it's easy to do, right? And hopefully the multiplication and the subtraction and all that stuff is clear as well. Any questions so far on that step? Okay, so now, once you plugged in, order of operations, and let's not minimize the challenges that sometimes show up, because sometimes it can be challenging. So it's -1 plus or minus the square root. Inside that square root, we have a couple of things going on. The first thing I see is an exponent, right? So what's 1 squared? 1. That's right. This is where people struggle. It's this. I'll highlight it for you. It's this stuff over here. You can handle this in a number of ways. Here's one way. You'll see this minus sign right here. I'm just going to, here's one way to do it. This is not the only way to do it. I'm just going to move that down. Okay? So once I move that down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 4 times 4. What's 4 times 4?
16.
That's right. And what's that times -3? Negative. Right? Positive 16 times -3 is -48. So this ends up being 1 minus -48. Do you see how people will get those minuses and the minus and the negative confused and dropped and lost and all that stuff? It's easy to do. Okay, so then in the denominator, I think we can just do 2 times 4 is 8. Like so. And then we're almost there. So x would equal -1 plus or minus the square root of 49. When you do minus, minus is really a plus.
Wait, where's the 49?
So, Sarah, look right here. What is minus a negative, really? It's plus a positive. 1 plus 48 is 49. Okay. Doesn't that look a lot like an answer that we've had like in the last 20 minutes in this room? But you can simplify 49, right? What is it? 7. Square root of 49 is 7. So x equals -1 plus or minus 7 over 8. And we can actually simplify this, right? So let's keep going. Let's see here. It's going to be x equals -1 plus 7 over 8. And -1 minus 7 over 8. That's right. So what's -1 plus 7? Over 8 would be 3/4 if you reduce it. You're right. And then what's -1 minus 7?
-8.
And then if you divide that by 8, -1. You guys are correct. So these two right here would be your solutions to this quadratic equation, 3/4 and -1. So again, I just want to go back and emphasize to you guys the challenging part for most folks, and I hope this is not the case with you, hopefully you'll just be able to navigate this, is what in the world do I do with that stuff? How do I deal with the minus signs that you potentially could have 3, 4 minus signs in there? You want to be really careful with how you handle those in the order of operations. Okay, do you guys have any questions? Most people find this to be a pretty agreeable thing, because if you can just get everything plugged in where it's supposed to go, then you're in good shape. One thing I failed to mention at the very start, did you guys notice that this was in standard form? So in order to use the quadratic formula, it needs to be in standard form. Okay? All right, so I would say that we were at least mildly successful with that. You guys seem to be tracking really well with me. Why don't you guys try number 2 and see if you can use the quadratic formula. I'll just let you kind of explore with this a little bit, see how it goes. Check back in a little bit. Check your answers.
It's alright if we have a fraction, correct?
It is. Now, that one I think says that you're supposed to round to the nearest tenth or something. See how this all goes. So step number 1 is to get this into standard form. If you are going to use the quadratic formula, it's got to be in standard form where everything's on one side equals 0. So it's clearly not quite like that. So I'm going to get it there. This will be 2x squared minus 5x plus 1 equals 0. Thank you. There we go. So like I said, to use quadratic formula, it's got to be in standard form. It can't be in some random jumbled form where things are all over the place. It's got to be everything on one side equals 0. So there's that. It did say use the quadratic formula, so I think that it might be a good idea to write it out. And if you need to sing a little bit, you can. Right. Right. Okay. Sarah, well done. Again, nice job. So again, I just want to remind you all, that like on a quiz or a test, if you raise your hand and you say, I forgot the quadratic formula, can you tell me what it is? I'm going to be really nice, but I'm going to say no.
Are we going to be able to step outside and start to sing the song? And then remember
You can hum it if you want.
Okay. I'm going to hear Sarah in the middle of the test.
Yeah, she's going to.
Humming.
Whatever. Hey, if I were you, hey guys, just a helpful hint. Listen. Hush. I just said helpful hint. I think this would be really helpful. If I were you and I was taking that quiz next week and I was, knew that the quadratic formula might be incorporated on this quiz somewhere, the first thing I would do once I get the quiz is write it down so that I don't have to remember it for the end of the quiz or something. I'm just going to, if I got to hum or sing or whatever, I'm not going to say the specifics. No, you can't do that. That would be dubious at best, right? Okay, so guys, I think as I walked around, I think there's some things we need to work on. So we're going to write it like this, where we got empty parentheses for all the plugins here, all over 2A, like so. So then, let's see here. I guess I can't really do much with that there. So the A value would be 2. And this is where getting to standard form makes a difference. B is -5. C is 1. And so we want to make sure that we have all those things set up. And I'm basing that, of course, on this right here. Okay, so then let's see here. The B is -5. That goes here and here. A is 2. That goes here and here. C is 1. That goes there. So again, I want to just try to help you navigate through these. What is the opposite of -5? Or -5? It's 5, yeah. So let's be careful that we're not losing minus signs. I would say what we're about to do is also pretty significant. What is negative 5 inside parentheses squared? It's positive, right? Yeah, it's really easy to forget that that's positive. It's just negative 5 times negative 5. That's what squared means, so it's positive. And then I'm going to, 4 times 2 times 1 is 8, so it would be minus 8. All divided by 2 times 2 is 4. I'm going to come up here in the upper right and finish this. It'd be x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 17 divided by 4. And so if you're just going to do exact answers, wouldn't that be correct? You'd be done at that point. There's no reason to keep going. But it did say decimals, and so I'm going to split this up, and we'll use the calculator. It'd be 5 plus root 17 over 4, or x is equal to 5 minus root 17 over 4. And square root of 17, I think, is about 4 point something, right? 4.12. Okay, so if you go 5 plus 4.12 over 4, that'll definitely be, what's the bigger answer here? X equals what? I can get out the calculator if I need to. Say it again. Over 10?
4.
Over 4. Okay, will you go ahead and do the division for me?
Because I looked at the problem.
Did you guys do this? No, I don't have the answer memorized. Will you help me?
It's
X equals 2.28 and X equals
2.28. 2.28
Yeah.
and 0.22?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll check it on mine too. So 5 plus root 17,
Is it 0.28? It is
0.28.
0.28.
Okay. That makes sense.
Wait, no, it's not. No, it's not. Because
I just did it in my calculator.
what? No, for the first one. No.
So I agree with 2.28.
Hold on a second. How? Because it's 2.28 is correct. 0.22.
0.22.
0.22.
Please check your answers against mine. Did you guys get that? 2.28 and 0.22. Any questions?
Do you divide them right?
Do I do what?
Do I do like 5 minus 17?
I'll show you. Why don't I show you how I would do this on the calculator? If we're going to do that, let me just show you how you do the calculator here. There we go. All right, so if I was going to do the first one, you could do this a number of ways. If you want to do it in one step, I'd use parentheses. So I'd go 5 plus the square root of 17, close parentheses, divided by 4. So that way you're putting the whole numerator, you're grouping that whole numerator, and that's going to give you that 2.28. Here's another way you could do it. 5 plus square root of 17. Hit enter to calculate what that is. So that'll tell you what that is. But then you still got to divide by 4, right? So then you can just directly hit divided by 4. That'll also give you 2.28. The one thing you cannot do to get a correct answer is 5 plus square root 17 divided by 4. This is one of the ways that would give you a wrong answer, right? Because what's your calculator doing? It's going to do order of operations, right? So isn't it going to do the root 17 divided by 4 first?
Yes.
Get that result and then add 5 to that? So that's the wrong order of operations.
If you put 5 plus square root of 17 and then got that answer and then divided that by 4.
And that's what I did. Do you see those two middle steps?
Oh, yeah.
That's essentially what I did. I added, calculated what that was, and then said, okay, previous answer divided by 4. Yeah. So you'll see this last one is going to give you an incorrect answer. 6.03 is not right. So, okay. Sarah, does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's finish off our class with one last example. I believe I want to do this one. Sure, why not? Okay. So this one says, leave your solutions in exact form. Okay. Ready, set, go. So if you can use the quadratic formula, it might be a good idea to write it down. If it's okay with you guys, I'm going to write it like this. X equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root. Oh boy, I wrote on too high there. There we go. Of b squared minus.
You didn't do the minus.
4 AC all over 2A. There we go. Does that work? So when you fill things in, your B is 4. So that goes here and here. Your A is 3. Goes there and there. Your C is -1. All right, so as you work through this, I saw a lot of good work. Opposite of 4 is -4. 4 squared, of course, is 16. And then I think there was definitely a mix here. This is where you got to be ultra careful. This minus sign, I'm just going to put it here. And then what's 4 times 3 times -1? -12. So it's really minus -12. A lot of times people will look at these two minus signs as being the same minus sign when they are definitely not. So it'll end up being plus, right? 2 times 3 is 6. So x equals -4 plus or minus. You guys are okay with root 28 over 6? So if you got to that point, I would say that listen, please don't pack up. You've definitely done the quadratic formula. You've done it well. And this, honestly, this did not say anything about putting your answers in most simple form. But if it did, do you see how this fraction is not totally reduced? But there's more than that, though, too. This root 28 can be simplified. Check this out. This is -4 plus or minus the square root of 2 times 7 over 6. Yeah? Plus, sorry, my pen didn't quite catch that. Yes, plus or minus that still. So it'd be 2 root 7, wouldn't it? You guys remember this from unit 8, I think it was? Yeah. So it'd be -4 plus or minus 2 root 7 over 6. Then if you think about it, wouldn't the 2 factor and the 6 cancel with both the 4 and the 2? So then I'm going to go up here. Yeah, I'll write it as -2 plus or minus 1 square root of 7 over 3. We cancel the 2 out of all of them. You know what? Based on that funny look, I'll show you the steps.
Yeah.
Do you see how with this and this, do you guys see how they have a common factor of 2?
Yeah.
So check it out. It would be 2 times -2 plus root 7 over 6. Do you see that? I undistributed the 2. This would cancel with this to give you a 3. So it would end up being -2 plus or minus root 7 over 3. So if you're going to take it all the way home to there, that's a couple of extra steps, right? If it says write your answer in simplified form, yes. It didn't really say that, so I don't think you really have to do that here. But anyways. Hey guys, I think you're doing well. We'll do a lot of practicing next week, hopefully finish really well. Have a good day.